Goodness. You know, when you get introduced like that, it gives you a little foreshadow of your own funeral. And meditation on death, I'm told, is a worthwhile spiritual practice, and we should all engage in it sometime. So thank you for that opportunity to contemplate that. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wassalatu wassalam ala ashraf al-makhluqat. Sayyid al-Mursaleen. Friends, it's lovely to be back at Chautauqua with you for the third time. Can you all hear well? How about now? Good. I want to begin with a little reflection on why is it that we might want to take an hour of your one wild and beautiful life, this precious existence, to talk about something as seemingly luxurious as meditation, when half the world is on fire and the other half is underwater, and all of it is in pain. There's a great Somali-British poet, Warsan Shire, who has a gorgeous short poem about running her fingers all over the globe and asking, where does it hurt? And the globe answers, everywhere. It hurts everywhere. And it's true that for many of us, the everywhere might have some particular localities, places that surface in our hearts more than others. The plight of Syrian refugees, people from Myanmar, the pogroms in India, Kashmir, Palestine, Israel, Sudan, and of course, now, our own beloved country, these United States of America. Even if, and especially when, our sympathies and loyalties might gravitate more towards one side of the conflicts than others, I think we can all agree that there's something about the state of the world today and the fate of so many of our communities which is not the way that things ought to be. So, what is it that our faith traditions, our great, vibrant, still alive spiritual traditions have to offer us at a time like this, and especially in this very time? I want to speak about meditation and begin with the disclaimer that if you have come hoping to receive some teachings that will make your life happier, to make for a better notion of yourself, you might want to ask for a refund. What if we got meditation wrong? What if, what if meditation is not just about creating a notion of a happier self? What if meditation is not designed to help you scale your project, to increase your productivity, to get that next book deal, to manifest wealth? What if meditation is not even really about yourself. So what is it about? The great poet Rumi, whom you heard being alluded to as possibly the greatest love poet that this world has ever had, has a beautiful poem in which he talks about a person going to the house of the friend and knocking at the door. The friend is one of his code words for God. What would it mean to call on God as the ultimate friend? So he says that this visitor, this pilgrim, goes to the house of the friend and knocks, and a voice comes from the inside saying, "Who is it?" And the pilgrim, the visitor, says, "It's me." And the friend from the inside answers, "How can it be me since I'm already on the inside? Go away." And it says the pilgrim goes away into the desert of contemplation and reflection, realizing that he had committed an offense of seeing himself as being other than the friend. He had committed the one sin, which is separation. So he comes back, cooked, a little bit more ripe, knocks again, the same voice comes, "Who is it?" And this time he says, "It's you." And this time the friend says, "Well, since it's me, oh, you, me, come into me. Oh, you, me, come into me." That's what we're going to be focusing on meditation as a way of helping us rise above the notion of separatedness, of having not just an intellectual understanding, but an experience in our bodies, in our hearts, of being connected. And we have to ask to be guided to this. I mean, remember, even Jesus, peace be upon him, asks God to teach him how to pray. And however cool you and I might think we are, we're not any cooler than Jesus. So we can ask God to teach us how to meditate. What's the difference between what we usually conceive of as prayer and what we're hoping to get to in this kind of a unitive experience of meditation? Prayer, when it's not just going through the cosmic drive-through, right? Can I have some health and some wealth, and while I'm at it, someone for my children to marry who looks exactly like me? Right? That's the universal prayer. There's the Persian version, there's the Arab version, there's the Indian version, there's the Jewish version. Prayer is usually about praying to God. What we are going to be hoping to experience here is praying with God. That's the goal. To rise just enough beyond the illusion of a limited, finite self, and to merge into that cosmic chant of divine praise, to join you with the awareness of these trees, of the ducks that I saw on the lake this morning, on the clouds, and the grass. Real meditation is not cognitive. It's not about a certain modality of thinking. And for the sake of God, it's not about holding a particular belief. It's about softening up the boundaries that we have set up for ourselves between us and nature, and between us and God. It's about a kind of softening and diffusing. If you grew up, or if you had children who grew up watching The Lion King, well, that's a great Islamic cartoon. You're living in the jungle, eating worms and maggots, singing Hakuna Matata. But you are not born to eat maggots. You are the one true child of the king and the queen. You have to remember who you are, and you have to remember whose you are. To whom do you belong? In our tradition, we are told that at a time before there was time, that God gathered up all the members of humanity who would ever be. Think about this. We've got a beautiful gathering here. And then think about your great ancestors and all of your descendants. And all of us being gathered in front of God before there's a creation, before there's an earth, before there are nations and tribes. And God asks the most ultimate, epic, rhetorical question. Alastu birabbikum? Am I not the one who cherishes you? Am I not the one who cares for you? Am I not the one who tends to you? We're told that all of us heard that question as, am I not your God? Am I not your Lord? But some who were inclined towards love heard that same question as, am I not your friend? Am I not the one who loves you? Am I not the one who loves you? And what an extraordinary mystery it is that the one who has made the infinite galaxies calls you a friend, calls you beloved. And then we're told that for the ones who aspire towards a contemplative life, a meditative life, that they heard the same question as, am I not the only being? Am I not all that there is? The goal of meditation is to return to that moment when all of us, all who have ever been, are and shall be, all the grass, all the leaves, all the trees, all the butterflies, all the birds, are standing before God, seeing and being seen, adoring and being adored, loving and being loved. There's a great Muslim mystic, Bayezid, that when he reaches 60, and 60 is just around the corner from me, I hope I make it. He says to God, "My loving Lord, I have loved you for 60 years. And he hears the voice of God coming back to him saying, "My beloved, I have loved you since before there was a thing called time." That's the state that we're trying to get back to. And for us, in the Islamic tradition, the epitome of meditation is the most luminous experience of the Prophet Muhammad, where he is taken on a heavenly journey to see God face to face, as so many of the prophets and prophetesses before him had done. It gives me hope in this age of pain that his experience of rising to see God face to face comes after the year where he loses the people most precious to him. He loses his darling wife Khadija and his uncle. He describes that year as the year of sadness, the year of grief. And sometimes you get your heart broken, and that's precisely when God comes rushing in. How I hope and pray that the grief that we're going through as a human community, which is not uniform, but it is universal, will lead us to a greater awakening for all of us. He's taken from his hometown of Mecca in Arabia to Jerusalem. Imagine how sweet this would be in our age, where he is united with all the prophets and prophetesses who've ever been sent. Imagine if the prophets and their communities are not in some bizarre competition over who owns God, but imagine if the prophets line up in prayer together. Imagine if the prophets are described as siblings. And from there, step by step, he ascends through the layers and levels of heaven, and he pauses at the very presence of God, and he says, this is what meditation looks like. I had an eternal now with my loving Lord. I had an eternal now. I had a whole eternity pressed into a breath. Maybe you've had experiences like this. You hold the hand of a loved one and you go for a stroll. And time stops being linear. You experience entire universes. A child is born, and your heart expands. He says, I had with my loving Lord a moment in which no angel was even allowed. It was just to be alone with the One. Alone with the One. And that's why the mystics of our tradition call themselves children of the eternal now. Children of the moment. There's a lot of noise in our world, you might have noticed. Some of the loudmouths in particular seem to have pretty significant microphones. Every day, a new nonsense, never ending. There's very little time to recover before the next assault on our dignity comes. Living in an age of noise and bombast, silence is a beautiful divine gift. I joked, and not joked, that one way that we could have had this whole conversation today was to have 45 minutes of pure, blissful silence. And they reminded me that there may not be a fourth invitation if we were to do that. There's a Muslim mystic who says, "I've never seen a light as bright as silence." God speaks and we come into creation. What was it like before God spoke? What would it be like to return back into that silence? Rumi says, "Do not think that the garden loses its ecstasy in the winter. It's quiet, but the roots down here are riotous." The roots down here are riotous. And you know this. Think of the last time that you got really angry. Do you find yourself, you beautiful, luminous, wise person who shows up for a week on meditation at Chautauqua, do you find yourself screaming at the television? Not sure that the one that you're screaming at can hear you. Why do we shout at a person who has earned that kind of anger and wrath? Because they feel so distant. Maybe we've had an argument like this. We shout because the person feels so far. And then think about lovers. Lovers whisper. And comes a time where the greatest bliss you can imagine is to have your beloved hold your arm and walk next to water. No words are necessary. You make love, and words are superfluous, and all you want is to love glance. Love can overcome words. That's an important part of this meditative tradition. The one that we want to whisper with, the one that we want to be silent with, is reaching out to you. You have a home. You're not homeless spiritually. One of the beautiful poems that Rumi has, he paraphrases the Gospels, where you know this one and he knew that one. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. Ask and it shall be granted unto you. And so he says, he's playing with the Gospels. He says, "My friend, You have been knocking and knocking and knocking at the door of God, begging for it to open. Sweetheart, you're knocking from the inside. You're knocking from the inside. You're already home. You are with God. You are in God. There is no place outside of God any more than the fish could ever exist outside of the ocean. And he offers us this extraordinary comfort from the one beloved, from that beloved who comes in 1,000 disguises, from the one that the prophet calls Al-Rafiq al-Ala, the highest friend. That's literally the very last phrase that the prophet utters in his earthly life. I choose the highest friend. And so Rumi writes a poem from God's vantage point. If you have lost heart on the path of love, flee to me without delay. Flee to me without delay. I am a fortress invincible. So that's enough talking about the presence and meditation. Let's actually do. And in our tradition, meditative practices take place by returning to the breath. The breath. These practices come out of a part of West Asia and South Asia where the great traditions of Islam, Hindu traditions, and Buddhism mingle very freely. They're in dialogue with their Jewish and Christian neighbors. And there's a mystery to the breath, nafas, which is from the same root as the word for soul, same way in Hebrew, nefesh. And it's not just air that they're talking about. It's when you bring your presence to the breath. Something extraordinary happens. We're told that whenever Rumi would want to take a drink of water, before he would take a sip, he would take the cup and he would kiss it as you would kiss a beloved. Slowly and patiently. And then he would take a sip. It's an odd thing to do again and again and again. So people eventually asked him. And his response was, does it not have a soul? Does it not have a John, a life force? Everything is ensouled. Everything is with spirit. Everything dances. It's such a different point of view than our modern scientific thought, where we think that things are things. What if there is nothing that's a thing? What if everything is alive? And in our tradition, this is part of that ancient worldview which talks about the 4 elements from which the whole universe is constructed. And if you've done yoga, if you've done some studies in mystical traditions, you've come across this. Earth, water, fire, air. Earth, water, fire, air. And the mystics of Islam teach us that to us they appear dead, to us they appear as things, but they're actually alive in God. And so the practice that we're going to be doing is to recognize the fundamental truth that you, my dear beloved friends, do not end at the tips of your fingers. That your being stretches far beyond your body and the notion of an isolated individual self. That the earth that you're sitting on, the air that you breathe, that water that I just took a sip out of, and the fire that both shines upon us through the clouds, and you sense the heat from the lunch that you might have had. This is flowing through existence. So this is called the elemental breath practice. And I'm going to walk us through this practice one by one. This practice is one that has been around in many different faith traditions. I'll share with you the form that I know from our own South Asian tradition. If you're not familiar with it, we'll try to make it a little easier. If you wish, feel free to close your eyes. Sit up straight, straighten up your spine. Sense your tailbone where it's connecting to the chair, or if you're sitting on the ground. Experience your crown as being open towards heaven. If you've been carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, roll your shoulders a few times. You can put down the burdens that you've carried for just a moment. You can always pick them back up. And we're going to move through these 4 cycles of breath, reminding us of the ways in which we are interwoven and connected. If you're new to these practices, take your dominant hand and put it over your heart. And we will begin simply by observing the breath entering your chest and exiting. You are emptied and filled, emptied and filled. Feel the space between your ribs. Feel the breath permeating your shoulder blades. The belly rises and falls. Sense the breath permeating your limbs. You've noticed that for most of the day you've been taking very shallow breaths. But now the breath deepens, widens. Push out the air in your lungs. Push it out as far as you can. When you do so, you see that the breath comes rushing in. Try that again. Push out all the air that you can out of your chest. You don't have to do any work. The breath comes rushing in. You've done so much work. You've done good work. But you don't even have to do the breathing. You are being breathed. Take about 7 cycles of just watching yourself being emptied and filled, emptied and filled. One of the great sages of Islam, Kharaqani, who was an illiterate shepherd, said, "All I want from heaven and earth is to breathe with God for one breath." We'll now begin with the earth breath. Each one of the breaths has a feature and a direction. The earth breath is through the nose and out through the nose. And its direction is horizontal. Imagine a beautiful oriental carpet being rolled out over the hills and over the lake. The breath that you exhale is inhaled by the birds. And the breath that the trees exhale is inhaled by you. In through the nose, out through the nose. We are earth creatures, made from the earth. We come from the earth, and someday we will return to the earth. The earth breath has qualities of being grounded, rooted, stable. Now the breath shifts in through the nose, out through the mouth, in through the nose, out through the mouth. This is the water breath. And its direction is descending, cascading, as if you were standing under a waterfall. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The water in our veins is the same as what is in the lakes. And the soft rain that falls from the sky is the same as the tears that roll down your cheek. The water that I drank just a few hours ago was flowing in some pipes. And in another few hours, it will leave me and go back to rivers and streams. So do I pass through life? No, it's life that passes through us. Now the breath shifts again. In through the mouth, out through the nose, in through the mouth, out through the nose, and this is the fire breath. And like fire, its direction is rising, ascending. A great flame whose tips merge with the unseen. In through the mouth, out through the nose. Fire carries the energy of love, of longing. There's a beautiful Arabic line, love is something that burns everything other than God. And you become aware that the caloric heat of digestion in your body is ultimately from the same source as the heat of the sun. You're not separate. Now the breath shifts one last time. In through the mouth, out through the mouth. This is the air breath. And the direction now is in every direction. It's shifting. It's zigzagging. There's a freedom. Less given to forms and structures. And you remember that respiration is tied to inspiration. The Spirit fills you. You are an earthling. You contain your own inner landscape. You are containing a tributary of the great hydrological system. The fire of love can burn in your heart. And air that we breathe mingles with all. So we bring the practice to a pause with a prayer. Beloved Lord, Almighty God, through the rays of the sun, through the waves of the air, through the all-pervading life in space, purify and revivify me. And I pray, heal my body, heart, and soul. Sense your state. Become aware of your surroundings. You become aware of the air dancing with the leaves and the singing of the birds and the friends sitting next to you. When you're ready, open your eyes. So what now? Where do you want to go after meditation? Our Buddhist friends, at least some of them, say, after ecstasy comes the laundry. And our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when he is at the zenith of all existence, when he's lost for an eternity in God, with God, when he is a child of the eternal now, God offers him a choice. And God says, Ya Muhammad, O Muhammad, you can stay in this state of bliss for as long as you wish. And Muhammad says, how can you say yes or no to the beloved? But there's a task. And there's a calling. And so his response is, Ummati, my people. How can I choose my individual bliss until I do what it takes to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to experience something like this? And he returns, so that we can have our eternal now. There's a great South Asian mystic who said, I swear by the one in whose hand is my soul. If it had been me, I would have never come back. But being a prophet is not a one-man, one-woman operation. Those are the ones who know that I cannot be who I want to be until you become everything that you need to be. So how do we come back? There's a beautiful line in the Quran. فَأَيْنَمَا تَوَلُّوا فَثُمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. Everywhere that you look, there is the face of God. What does that mean? Rumi says it's quite simple. Turn to your right. Turn to your left. Look beyond your friends here. Look at the trees. Listen to the wind. Look at the sunshine playing hide and seek with the clouds. Everywhere that you look, there is the face of God. can we see the face of God in one another? Can you see these trees as faces of God? Well, to do that, we need to have the eyes of God. We need to have divine eyes. So I'm going to wrap it up in just about 2-3 minutes. And I want to talk about how do we cultivate the eyes of God. You might have read Romeo and Juliet sometime in 9th grade. There's a much older love story, Layla and Majnun. If you ever heard the Eric Clapton version of Layla, coolest guitar riff in history. He was madly in love with George Harrison's wife, but we digress. Unrequited love is a proud tradition. Majnun was a simple boy who falls in love with this dark-haired beauty. Dark eyes, dark skin, dark hair. And he writes the most beautiful love poems for Layla. The poems become legendary, and the ruler of Arabia reads these poems, and he thinks to himself, I got to meet this girl. Whoever this girl is that inspires this kind of love poetry clearly belongs in my harem. And just to make sure, he doesn't just bring Layla to his court, he has all the women from Layla's tribe brought to his court. And he's quite tingling with excitement when the day comes, and he goes in and he's looking at the crowd, and he's fully expecting that one of these women is just going to surface above all the rest. And he's holding the poems in his hand, and he looks at the women gathered in front of him. Until 5 years ago, I think they called them basic. If you have teenagers, you get that. Now the lingo changes. It's like the breath, it shifts. I think it's called Ohio now. But you got to ask someone that has teenagers, you know? None of them are that special. And so he turns to his advisors. Did you bring Layla? Yes, Your Majesty, we brought Layla. But they don't match. And so he finally addresses the crowd and he goes, is one of y'all Layla? And then Layla steps forward. And you got to watch out, because in this tradition, Layla talks back. And she looks just like the rest of them. You wouldn't have necessarily looked at her twice as the one who inspired such poetry. And so he looks at her and he looks at the poems one last time and he goes, you? You are Layla? And Layla says, I am Layla. But you are not Majnun. And the poets say, in order to see the beauty of Layla, you have to cultivate the eyes of Majnun. What would it mean to see as if you are seen by God? What does it mean to listen to what is said poorly, and what is unsaid, as if you were listening with the ears of God? What is it to touch as if you are being held by God? What is it to see and to be seen, to love and to be loved? Fortunately, we've got examples. And one thing that we know from the prophet is that whenever he would speak with someone, He wouldn't just turn his head and chat with them. He would turn his entire body so that his shoulders were square with their shoulders. And for the time that he was speaking with them, to the extent that they were comfortable, he maintained uninterrupted glance. And whenever somebody would ask him, how did he make you feel? They never said, he made me feel like the most important person in the world. They always said, he made me feel like the only person in the world. So after meditation, now what? It's not to make you happier. It's not to make us manifest wealth. And it's not even to become a spiritual junkie seeking after mystical bling-bling. It's not to soar in the air. It's to learn to walk here on earth, fully present, here and now, with one another, to the trees and the wind, to the earth and water, to love and to air, here and now. Thank you.